there is a way to produce massive behavioral change. Each of us have behaviors and patterns of behavior that undermine our effectiveness.
And rather than beat yourself up about your unwanted, unliked behavior, when you're tired of beating yourself up, put the stick down.
So for years, our team had a training event. First week in January, which meant that we got to be together to watch the national championship game of college football that Monday, the first Monday in January every year. And Z is a huge Clemson fan. Your son went there. I'm a huge Alabama fan. My daughter went there. She played ball for Saban, of course. Oh, wait, no, I guess she didn't.
But did I mention that my son
played ball? He did.
Yeah.
He actually
was a
played
4-year
football.
starting punter.
Tell us more.
Oh, he was awesome.
Oh, it's so good.
We have to keep this to 25 minutes,
Okay,
so I
that's
better
right.
not get started.
There we go. So, all right, so we're watching the same game, right? We're watching the
National
same game.
championship.
As Bama's up, and it's looking good, and I'm feeling great about myself. I'm strutting around the family
I
room.
watched him just in his element, just bragging about his
my gosh,
team.
right?
He was like, yeah, it was crazy.
And late in the fourth quarter, Clemson comes back, takes the lead, wins the game.
And I humbly accept the victory with
Not
very
a,
little
not
fanfare.
a freaking chance.
Really respecting my friend who had lost tragically.
But here's the point. In that play, the game-deciding play, we're sitting side by side watching the exact same event. One of us is euphoric. The other of us is devastated.
Crestfallen.
Okay, crestfallen. Our behaviors are very different
Watching
in
the
response to
same thing.
the exact same event, same thing happening. Why is that? I would like to suggest to you that behavior is a product of our emotion, not our logic.
Say that again.
Our behaviors, by and large, not always, but by and large, human behavior is a product of our emotion, our psychology, and not our logic. Philosophy says, I think, therefore I am, right? Mm-hmm. I think a thing, and I rationalize it out, and then I do exactly what I decided I was going to do as I thought about it. Except we almost never do that.
Yeah, no.
Right?
I know more than I'm actually doing right now.
And we also know what we know is counter to what we actually do a lot of the time.
That's true too.
And since we're talking about leadership and Christian leadership, and since we lead humans and we're humans, I want to suggest to you that there is a way, a largely unexamined way, to produce massive behavioral change. Massive and consistent behavioral change, which has nothing to do with gutting out a different way to act and behave that I think will shock you.
Which can be, and often is, the cultural method. Just will it to happen.
Yeah.
Just double
Behave your way.
down and work harder, behavioral management.
Yeah. So let's go back to the football game. So imagine with me for a minute, there are 3 concentric circles. Okay? On the outermost circle are our behaviors, what we do. I asserted to you before with the example of the football game that our behaviors don't come from nowhere. They actually come from our emotions. When you and I watched that play that decided the game, our emotions were completely different than one another's. Neither was wrong or in error. But why did we emote differently? It's because the two of us had very different belief systems about the game, about the teams, about the schools, about the importance of those things. And so the innermost circle that drives everything are, for almost all human beings, largely unexamined beliefs.
system.
We have systems of belief. Now, no one would probably ever be aware of it. And we're saying that if you want to shift your emotions, how you feel about your life or your ministry or your organization, whatever it is, and therefore want to massively change the behaviors, what we need to do is to examine what are the belief systems that are in operation here.
So when you guys hear that run on the teaching of the circles, outer behavior, then emotions, and the core being, belief systems, what's your reaction?
You know, it's funny, we didn't talk about this, and it reminds me of some of the conversation we had about being whole-brained Christians.
What do you
say more?
Well, you were talking about a way to massively affect our behavior.
Yeah.
And we were talking about being whole-brain Christians, that character development, behavior change happens on the right side of our brain. And to me, it's sort of it's tying these two things together.
Huh?
Yeah. It's because we're talking about our belief systems, which I think some of our belief systems that are talked about in the other half of church are like, who am I? Who are we? How do we act in these situations? Yeah, like those are the kind of belief systems that you're talking about. And it's interesting that I've never put this together, but hearing you say this, it just rings that like truth bell, and it's another way to think about, as I'm thinking about for myself.
Yeah.
How can I modify, things that maybe I don't like that I do?
Yeah. So that's at one level, thinking about individually, how does my behavior change?
Right.
And what do I...
Sorry. Keep going. Forgive me.
You're forgiven. I was going to try to segue to applying the same pattern to begin to think about the environments that I'm over in the church. Small groups, weekend services as a lead pastor. How am I influencing others with this understanding or application? Am I focused on their behaviors, or how am I looking for what's being emoted, what is felt, and then inviting people to examine, and as leadership, am I able to examine our collective church's belief systems? For example, we talked about in the last episode this idea of impact and wanting to reach the community, having an intention to reach the community, but we're not really doing it. Let's use that same example and come back and say, what are our behaviors? What are the underlying emotions connected to our behaviors?
Right.
But let's keep going and say, what is the real issue at the core?
What's the belief underneath it all?
That is at the heart of our unwillingness or even our ineffectiveness. What's the belief system that's influencing the level of commitment to reach the community?
So let's say, if you're honest, you attend an insular church. We're isolated. We're insular, right?
Okay.
Well, why is that? Well, we actually distrust the community outside. We're actually afraid that it's not safe.
There it is.
We're actually worried about being called on the carpet over our politics or our LGBTQ standards or whatever it happens to be.
We're fearful we'll lose members because messy, unchurched people who are not walking with Jesus will bring their whole selves and influence our children.
So that's a belief. So that's a belief system.
Okay.
I was describing the emotions, the fear, and discomfort and all this kind of thing, right? But so that's an example of a belief system that's at the core is if we engage with unchurched people, they will affect and
Influence.
us in negative
Yeah,
ways.
yeah.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
Or it's unsafe out there. That's not a feeling, that's a belief system. What other belief systems might be in play in a church that is insular
Yeah.
and inward focused?
Yeah, so I think that as I'm hearing you guys talk about this, it's super interesting because so often we do just want to think about our self-development angle, right? I want to develop myself. I want to examine my belief systems. And yet, maybe we as a church like to not reach outside of our four walls because we believe that the best thing that we can do is invest in the people who are coming to my. The best thing I can do with my time is invest in the people
People
that
who
I
are here.
have.
Love the ones you're with.
Yeah,
who's
in
here?
my
Move
church
with the movers.
already.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a belief.
That would cause me to
Yeah.
feel like somebody invites me, we as a group believe that somebody invites us to go be a part of some sort of outreach, and our emotion is like a negative emotion towards that.
That could be dangerous. I don't know.
And so we say no.
Unpredictable. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's really interesting.
I think there's an interesting, very unexamined belief system that is surrounded by the statement, aren't we supposed to be unlike the world? And so there's an element of pride and
In our separateness.
in
huh?
our separateness that says if we mix it up and really befriend and build relationships and care, let's just say really authentically love our near neighbors,
As ourselves.
that somehow we're worried about other believers misunderstanding and maligning our character and viewing us as ungodly because we're willing to risk to meet unchurched people on their turf in their real worlds. And I think for decades it's kept us from risking engagement with unchurched people on their turf.
Well, how dare you hang out with prostitutes
Sinners.
and Pharisees
Drunkards.
and
Tax
tax
collectors.
collectors and go
Yes,
eat
that's
at their house.
That's the point.
And do you know where that woman's been who's washing your feet with her hair? And,
Perfect.
Right.
Yeah,
There
yeah.
you go.
so then that makes,
Yeah, there's an illustration of a bunch of behaviors
right.
that were fueled by emotion, by feelings
Right.
that were tied to a core belief system.
Beautiful.
It just makes you wonder, like, what belief systems do we as the Western church hold that have a lot of overlap with the belief systems that the Pharisees in the time of Jesus held? And why are they causing us to act in a similar way?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't want to be like that. And it makes me ask that question of myself.
Yeah.
What belief systems am I holding?
Switching back to the personal side or the individual side, think about parents. I'm a parent. Think about my engagement, my relationship with my children. The focus too often is on their behavior. And coincidentally, it's the behavior that causes in me the feeling of being embarrassed by them. I'm in public, they're misbehaving. I think it's a referendum on my parenting, my lack of parenting.
Wow.
And as a result, I'm not attentive to the emotion that's generating the behavior. And I almost never got to the idea of what's going on in this kid's belief system that's actually causing his emotion to lead to his behavior. No, I'm just focused on don't do this or do this better
Yeah.
or you shouldn't do this.
Yeah.
Let me correct you.
Yeah.
And I think it's just a deeper level of understanding. It's a competency that will serve leaders, in our judgment, really, really well. to slow that whole thing down.
Yeah.
You like to say, follow the breadcrumbs. What do you mean?
Yeah. So the trail of breadcrumbs begins with a behavior.
Yeah.
Each of us have behaviors and patterns of behavior that where we get in our own way. We undermine our effectiveness. Okay, so where's that coming from? If the breadcrumbs lead from behavior to emotion
Yeah.
to belief, then what's there? What's there each step of the way? That's what I mean by the trail of breadcrumbs.
So at any moment, it sounds like we could pause, if we have the wherewithal,
Yep.
to say, I just did this, or I just caused this.
Yes.
What's the emotion behind that I have that generated that action?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Identify the emotion
Yes.
and say, why do I feel that way?
Yeah.
I feel that way because I believe such and such
Yeah.
about the situation, the circumstance, the person,
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I deserve better. I
deserve-
should be treated like this. My wife shouldn't respond in such and such a way.
Right.
You know, right? That's a belief system.
Right.
I can't be used by God. I can't be effective in ministry.
It's fascinating. The most profound coaching moments I've experienced of being coached often is the coach, whether it's you or another person I've recently started working with, and they will be less interested in the activity or the action, and they're waiting and asking questions that help me get to what's underneath it.
Yeah.
Or
There we go.
when I have been in counseling.
Great.
Right.
Counselors really drill into the what
That's
is
the
it that I
breadcrumbs.
believe?
That's the trail that
Yeah.
we're inviting
That's a perfect example.
you
What
guys
just
to
gave.
consider.
So I was just going to piggyback on what you said, Nick, and say now it's not just individual. It helps me as a dad to slow myself down and work that same process with my children, especially when they're younger. I say that and then I think, well, no, maybe as adult children, I still need to slow myself down and say, okay, what's going on? But the pattern works every time to do it. We're just not thinking that way. We're reacting to the behavior. And then I think as church leaders, I'm thinking about as a lead pastor and we're in a situation where something has happened and there's been a complaint about the way the student pastors behaved, and everybody's out to just really ream and rag on the student pastor. Well, I call the student pastor into the office, and rather than just drill down on his behavior or her behavior, what if I had the wherewithal, because I've trained myself in this competency, to say, let's follow those breadcrumbs. And if nothing ever changed, I would leave that conversation with so much more depth of understanding. What was he or she feeling? What were the contributing factors? What's the context? I mean, it's not just so simple. You did something that somebody or I or somebody said is inappropriate or wasn't well timed or was misguided. That's easy.
Yeah.
Just rag on the behavior as if behavior modification was the goal.
Yeah.
See,
That's
just change. Well, we're saying how well this competency serves us as leaders in the church.
Because if you first of all, if you try to white knuckle yourself via behavioral change, that is a serial endeavor. This, then this, then this, then this. We're offering that if we can discover what the belief system is, that's producing a whole range of behaviors and choices for us, and realign it so it aligns with the Word of God.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's it.
Then all kinds of behaving shifts.
That's right.
I mean, I have a son who for 7 years was a daily heroin user. And he became, through a significant shifting in his belief system, He's been sober now for years, without a setback. And fundamentally, who he believes he is as a sober person is completely different
Yeah.
than who he believed he was
Yeah.
when he was getting loaded every single day.
So we've got a challenge for you guys. We thought this might be a little more provocative and a little more unique from some of our other conversations. So we want you to think about a behavior that undermines your effectiveness as a leader, or maybe as a husband or a father if you have children. So think about a behavior you'd like to see be different. Now think about some of the feelings or the emotions that cause you to behave that way. Give yourself permission to try and do what you said earlier, Nick. Identify. What is the emotion? Fear, guilt, anger. What are some other emotions that are common? Those are big ones.
Yeah, fear, shame,
Guilt. Yeah. All right.
insecurity,
Yeah. And then
inadequacy.
following the breadcrumbs, what unexamined beliefs are driving those emotions and therefore your unwanted behavior? And rather than beat yourself up about your unwanted, unliked behavior, follow those breadcrumbs. And like a friend of mine likes to say, when you're tired of beating yourself up, put the stick down. And I don't know if that works for you, but dang, I'm probably harder on myself than anybody ever is
Absolutely.
on me. You know, I can tolerate a lot of other people's feedback, but boy, when I
Jump
am
on the
self-condemning or I have a belief system that is way out of line with Scripture, it usually is a spiral that oftentimes requires somebody else to help me out. And a lot of times Kirk's walked me back from the edge, man.
And
Yeah.
vice versa.
and vice versa. So that
Anything
might
come
be
to
cool.
mind?
Yeah, and yeah,
Anything
you want
spring
to
in your
process
head? I
anything?
know you're totally on the spot here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like, what do you pick? You know, I'm like, oh, great.
Well, pick the most embarrassing one.
Yeah, our audience
Yeah.
wants to hear a really
Well,
good,
so
juicy one.
I'm a verbal processor,
right.
so you can help me out here. But what's coming to mind is when I'm feeling anxious about all the things I'm not getting done.
Yeah.
I'm feeling like I know I'm starting with emotion here, but go with me. I'm feeling anxious because there's a lot of things in my life that I don't feel like I'm doing a good job at handling or doing,
Got
or
it.
executing, or too much work,
Right.
in front of me, or too many conversations I know I need to have
Yeah.
that I can't get to, or whatever, people that are wanting my time
Yep.
because I'm
A piece
so
of it.
popular. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, you carry a lot of responsibility in a variety of lanes.
Yeah, that is
That's
the
undeniable.
challenge.
Right.
I notice that I begin to be very aware of what's going on around the house in a sort of like identify all the problems, be frustrated at all those problems, and then be frustrated that the other people in the house aren't addressing the problems. Whether it's the kids who continually do the same thing I ask them not to do, they're doing it.
It's a behavior.
Or
They're as clear as a bell.
the dirt on the walls from the handprints, and like how many times have I said, don't
The behavior.
touch the wall?
Yeah, they didn't wash their hands.
Right. So my behavior starts looking like control.
Good.
Because actually what's going on is I'm dealing with an anxiety that is like, I'm failing. I'm not performing, executing on things that I think I should be or other people expect me to be performing in. And so I think the belief has to do with, I know I often live with the belief that says other people are expecting a performance level from me that really they're not. Like
Yeah.
nobody's sitting at their house going like, oh, man, I just wish Nick would, whatever.
Yeah.
Or man, why hasn't Nick called me yet? Or you know what I mean? Like that's just not their narrative. But I live with that idea, and so I believe that I'm letting people down, and probably there's another layer of belief under that has to do with if I'm letting people down, I'm afraid that they will. It goes back to a historical abandonment struggle. So they will abandon me or tell me I'm not worthy of being around, right?
Yeah.
Like, so.
There it is. Yeah, there you go.
Beautiful example.
So how could that core belief shift?
Yeah, the core belief. Yeah, the core belief. Really, the healthy belief would be something around, or at times as what's ministered to me. Because it's a thing I think I'm always working through and trying to remind myself of that belief.
Yeah.
It has to do with how God sees me.
Yeah.
How God says I'm enough, even if I'm not accomplishing all the unlimited things I could be accomplishing, because He's not sitting there. Well, 6 things makes you worthy of my presence, but if you only reach 5 things, then I'm
disappointing.
Then I'm disappointed in you or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So the belief system might sound like, I'll never be abandoned.
Right.
Not by him.
Right.
Not by Emily.
Right.
Not by your kids.
Right.
And not by us.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Right.
wow. So
Right.
if that became the driver for how you felt about your world and your life and your productivity, you might feel differently about the exact same day, the same week, same weekend, right?
Yeah, a recognition of God's not abandoning me actually allows me to lean in a way that would find myself abiding in Him more. And as I'm abiding in Him more, I'm trusting Him more with everything going on that I'm not pulling off. And I'm probably more attentive to the things, like selecting the things that are His priority to do. And then I come out of that the other side feeling less anxious about all the other things that people in my home are not doing. And I'm not controlling them.
Yeah. So really dozens of behaviors
Ugh.
would actually change.
Right.
Without you having to try to change any of them.
No, on my best days, I show up as a very different guy in my house when that stuff's clear.
Wow.
I've had what I would consider a fresh thought, meaning I hadn't thought about sharing this, so it might even be half-baked, and it'll come out perhaps as not fully processed. So let me risk it and say, how fun might it be for you, Nick, with smaller children, and for the audience who have younger kids, to be very intentional with commercials on television or on our devices when ads pop up, learning to recognize the belief system underneath what's being communicated.
Oh, that's fun.
So imagine doing that over a decade, like from ages 5 to 15. What kind of adults might they be by examining their belief systems and everybody else's, whether it's processed publicly or not? They're learning to follow those breadcrumbs. I see behaviors in my friends, and I experience emotions from my friends, but what are the underlying belief systems of
cool.
my friends, and being able to evaluate themselves? And I just,
That's
boy,
fun.
I wish I'd had that as
cool.
a resource and a competency. That's what we're talking about, as a competency as a Christian dad when my kids were small. I mean, they catch some of it, but I'm thinking about being intentional rather than
Yeah, thank you.
accidental.
That's cool.
Like, what would that look like in the church, in our homes and stuff? So Anyway,
So let me give you one quick example. Another one, just thought of it as you were sharing.
so you weren't listening. You were thinking about what you were going to say?
I was actually practicing what every human does all the time. I was listening to what I was saying about what you were saying.
Okay, cool. Because I was doing that as Nick was talking. So,
Exactly. Otherwise, you wouldn't have gone where you went to.
so I
by
invite
the way, people don't hear what you say.
That's right.
They hear what they're saying about what you're saying. And this was 2 in a row illustration of that.
That's a whole conversation, right?
So I was perpetually late to everything. I was always late to everything.
I find that. All right.
Not relevant. 20 odd years ago, I attended a 4-day training where every time I was late, I had to account for what was more important than keeping my promise to be on time.
Wow.
And in the rigor of that, I uncovered a belief system operating me that I'm so busy, everyone understands. I've got 6 kids, I got a business, I got a ministry, I got this and this.
And you must be important.
Oh, and I'm so important.
Because you're busy, right?
Yeah, I'm so important. And that was the belief system. And when the belief system shifted to I'm not more important, and in fact, you, in disappointing you or making you
Frustrating
wait,
you. Yeah.
making you wait, as you like to say, $1 waiting on a dime. So when I make $1 wait on a dime,
That's a $10 bill, but go ahead. They get the point. Now they really
it
get
was so evident before you. You didn't have to point that out.
Go ahead.
You know what I
were
mean?
saying.
And so when my belief system shifted, it was like, boom, I'm occasionally late, but I'm not perpetually late like I was.
That's
I mean,
good.
Yeah, so there you go.
Let's try this. We bless you with the understanding that you're so much more than what you do and how you behave, what you produce, or even how you act or show up. We bless you with the fullness and the depth of understanding how to identify your emotions and recognizing how others are expressing theirs, so that there would be rigor and honesty about belief systems, and that from the core of your beings, you would choose to honor the Lord Jesus. And from your growth in this competency, we bless you with the power to release truth and new freedom in every single person you encounter the rest of your lives in ministry. In Jesus' name.